on genocide. The side bit means killing, and genus means a group or species. And the term itself was coined by a lawyer after the Second World War to describe the destruction of the European Jews by the Nazis. A whole group was systematically selected out and put onto trains and sent to the gas chambers. It was a conscious policy which eliminated, who knows, 5, 6, 7 million people. And that was described rightly as genocide. It's an appalling idea that you find a group of people. Through history, there have been different groups, sometimes heretics, sometimes witches, sometimes terrorists, whatever, and you set out to liquidate them. And so it's in many ways the most emotional and evocative term you could have to describe what one group of people is doing to another group. And obviously we need to preserve it. The trouble with the word I increasingly see is that, like many words, it's so powerful, so emotional, that it becomes a weapon or tool for anyone to use against any policy, any peoples that they dislike. So it becomes broader and broader and more watered down. Just to take two contemporary examples, one is the allegation that the Chinese have and perhaps are committing genocide against a minority in Xinjiang, the Uyghurs. Now, the evidence for that is nil, and indeed the UN and others have said we shouldn't use the word, but it continues to be used, and almost every day on the media you hear people saying, oh, we can't deal with those Chinese because they commit genocide. There's not a single shred of evidence, as far as I know, that they are systematically killing Uyghurs. So you retreat, some people retreat, saying, well, maybe not the killing. They're not concentration camps in the killing sense, but they are killing their culture, cultural genocide. And again, the evidence is very scant. There is certainly some pressure against extreme Islam, some pressure perhaps even towards a conformity, length of beards, costumes and so on. But the idea that the Chinese are prohibiting the language and prohibiting the places of worship and so on is again extremely thin and comes from one or two sources which are largely supported by right-wing groups in the West. So once you've said genocide, and you might even extend it to other places you dislike, like the treatment of people in Hong Kong, oh, that's genocide. Well, ridiculous. Another current example is the use of the word by certain Ukrainians who are fighting against the Russian invasion. Whenever what used to be called deaths in war, and maybe cruel and unnecessary deaths in war and individual crimes, now get elevated. So the leader of Ukraine and others, if there's an attack on a building and a bomb kills a number of people there, this is genocide. What the Russians are trying to do is to extinguish, and you hear this quite often now, extinguish the Ukrainian people. They want to replace them with Russians. They want to level the place. They are just as bad as the Nazis, and that is often said. The fact that many people think that there are very strong ultra-right Nazi tendencies within Ukraine historically doesn't inhibit anyone from saying the Russians are just like the Nazis, somewhat forgetting the role of Russia in defeating the Nazis. But it's effective. You say genocide and everyone tingles and starts signing the checks for new weapons. So this is the danger, that you overuse a word and it loses its real significance. It's very like Matilda and the fire story. Matilda crying fire, fire, and a few times the fire engines came out, and then they ignored her. It debases language, and there are many other examples of our current, rather hysterical social media and news coverage, which tend to inflame things by overusing technical, almost, terms to describe something which is very far from what the original word was invented for.